There will come a point in every parent's life that is inevitable. The moment when the children you once nurtured and guided grow up and begin to see you differently. Some may continue to show gratitude and respect, but others, whether unintentionally or not, may make you feel abandoned, disrespected, or even like a burden. What's even more heartbreaking is realizing that all the sacrifices and love you poured into them over the years seem to lose their meaning in their eyes. At that moment, you may feel confused, even angry. You may want to argue, to remind them of the years you gave up the world for them. But in today's video, I will show you how to navigate this, not through blame or resentment, but through 7 key actions to help you regain your children's respect naturally, deeply, and sustainably. Action 1. Stop seeking your children's approval. One of the most common mistakes parents make when their children grow up is desperately craving their approval. You constantly try to please them, sacrifice for them, and often say yes, even when your heart wants to say no, hoping that if you give enough, they will eventually appreciate you. But the painful truth is, the more you try to please them, the less they respect you. Respect does not come from endless sacrifices or silent endurance, but from how you perceive and treat yourself. I once knew a mother named Margaret who fell into this pattern. She used to be a strong, confident woman. However, after losing her husband, she poured all of her energy into her children, reshaping her entire life to accommodate them. Yet, in return, her children began to treat her as someone who was merely there to serve. Always available, always ready to do everything without being asked. What Margaret didn't realize was that by putting her feelings and needs beneath those of her children, she was silently teaching them that she didn't need respect. Her pursuit of their approval unknowingly signaled that she had no boundaries and no voice of her own. So, the first crucial action you must take is this: stop seeking your children's approval. Start by respecting yourself. Say no when necessary. Stand firm in your principles. You don't need to become harsh or angry. Just shift the way you treat yourself. Remember, when you respect yourself, others, including your children, will begin to respect you too. Action 2. Don't argue to demand respect. When your children treat you disrespectfully, the first impulse you may feel is to argue, to remind them, "I raised you all these years. I sacrificed everything for you. You should be grateful." But here's the reality. Arguments do not create respect. In fact, the more you try to argue, the more they will disregard you, sensing your desperation to win their attention through words. I remember the story of Mr. Frank, a retired teacher. He had always been a respected and admirable teacher, yet at home, he struggled to get his children to listen. When they dismissed his opinions or even mocked him, Frank would get upset, argue, and remind them of everything he had done for them. Yet the more he tried to reason with them, the worse things became. All he received were looks of indifference and avoidance. Frank only truly transformed the situation when he stopped arguing. Instead, he learned to stay silent at the right moments and calmly maintained his dignity, confidence, decisiveness through his actions. He no longer blamed them, nor repeated how much he had done for them. Frank simply demonstrated his integrity through the way he lived and how he treated himself. Respect is not found in words, it is felt through your presence. When you stop engaging in arguments and refuse to lower yourself to win them over, you are silently conveying that you are strong and worthy. Remember, children learn most from what you do, not just what you say. Action 3. Withdraw emotional dependence on your children. There is a painful truth that many parents face, spending their whole lives hoping for their children's attention, waiting for a phone call, a visit, or a simple, "How are you?" But depending on your children emotionally does not make them love you more. On the contrary, it often makes them feel pressured and even distant. I once met Helen, a gentle and loving mother who constantly waited for her children's calls. When they were busy and forgot, she would be the first to call, gently reminding them, "It's been so long since you visited," or "Mom misses you." Yet instead of bringing them closer, these words made her children feel suffocated, turning their calls into obligations instead of joys. The truth is, everyone, including your children, respects and wants to be close to those who are emotionally independent, who don't need others to feel whole. When Helen realized this, she started to pull back. She found joy within herself, joining exercise groups, book clubs, and doing volunteer work. And something surprising happened. Her children began to call more often, talk more openly, and genuinely wanted to reconnect. The third action you need to take is this: withdraw your emotional dependence on your children. Show them that you can live happily, peacefully, and fully whether they are present or not. When you create joy and fulfillment for yourself, your children will feel less burdened and naturally want to come back, not out of guilt, but out of love. Action 4. Set clear and firm boundaries. One of the main reasons children lose respect for their parents is because parents often fail to set clear boundaries. Many parents fear upsetting their children or damaging the relationship, so they tolerate everything, being interrupted, disrespected, or having their time and feelings ignored. But love alone cannot replace boundaries. Every relationship needs limits, even with your own children. I recall the story of Robert, a typical father in this situation. For many years, he was a successful businessman, confidently managing hundreds of employees. Yet strangely, at home, he couldn't control the growing disrespect from his children. They would interrupt him, ignore his opinions, and even treat him as if he were their servant. At first, Robert kept silent, thinking, "They're still young," or "I don't want to cause conflict." But the more he remained quiet, the worse things became. Finally, Robert decided to set boundaries. When his children interrupted, he calmly said, "I will continue when you're ready to listen." When they dismissed his opinions, he clearly stated, "You don't have to agree, but I expect you to show me respect." Most importantly, he showed them that if they couldn't maintain basic respect, he would not participate in gatherings, dinners, or help them as they expected. And something remarkable happened. Within a short time, his children changed. They realized that their father's presence was a privilege, not a given. From then on, Robert not only regained their respect, but also rebuilt a deeper connection with them. Dear parents, don't be afraid to set boundaries. Boundaries are not walls. They are bridges that help you and your children understand each other properly. Only when you know how to say no at the right time can you truly say, "I love you," in the most meaningful way. Action. Stop giving without being appreciated. Parental love often comes with boundless giving. Money, time, health, even sacrificing personal dreams. Yet when this giving is not appreciated but instead becomes an expectation in the eyes of your children, it no longer fosters love or respect, but breeds a sense of entitlement. I once witnessed the story of George, a gentle and loving father. For many years, he was the unwavering support for his children, always ready to help financially, fix their homes, babysit his grandchildren, and even set aside his hobbies just to be there whenever they needed him. However, instead of receiving gratitude, George often faced demands and complaints when he could not meet their expectations immediately. The fault wasn't entirely the children's. George had unintentionally taught them that his sacrifices were just part of his duty. When giving comes without limits, it is easily mistaken for an obligation rather than an act of love. One day, George realized he needed to stop. He began to help only when he felt it was appropriate, declined when it wasn't reasonable, and no longer tried to please his children at all costs. At first, they were shocked and even frustrated. But over time, they realized that their father could not, and should not, sacrifice endlessly. From that point on, every time George offered help, it was received with genuine gratitude and respect. Dear parents, love should never be exploited. Don't hesitate to stop giving when your generosity is no longer valued. Giving at the right time and in the right way is what truly nurtures respect. When your children understand that what you offer is a gift, not an obligation, they will learn to be grateful instead of demanding. Action 6. Build a life beyond your children. Here is a truth that few parents realize. When you make your children the center of your life, you don't make them love you more. Instead, you may unintentionally create distance. Children need to know that their parents love them, but they also need to see that their parents have a life, joy, and purpose outside of them. The story of Mrs. Eleanor is a clear example. A widow, after losing her husband, she poured all of her attention, love, and even her life's purpose into her children. She constantly called them, gave unsolicited advice, and silently hoped that her children would fill the void her late husband left behind. However, instead of drawing them closer, she pushed them away. They began to avoid her, visiting less frequently, and their calls became short and obligatory. Everything changed when Eleanor decided to focus on herself. She joined a book club, volunteered at a community center, learned to cook new dishes, and reconnected with friends. She no longer sat by the phone waiting for her children's calls as a daily routine. And the unexpected happened. Her children became more proactive, reaching out with genuine curiosity about what she was doing and how she was living. They no longer saw her as a lonely and dependent mother, but as a vibrant and admirable woman. Dear parents, your children will only respect and want to be close to you when they sense that you are truly living, not merely existing while waiting for them. Take time to care for yourself. Nurture your passions and hobbies, and build a meaningful life beyond your children. When you live happily and with purpose, your children's respect and love will return, not out of duty but out of genuine admiration. Action 7. Learn to forgive and accept your children's journey. Perhaps the most difficult thing for parents is accepting that children will not always behave as you expect. Sometimes they will hurt you with careless words, indifferent attitudes, or emotional distance. But do you know? Your children are also struggling with their own journey of growing up. Many parents feel hurt and resentful, wanting their children to change immediately. However, resentment never heals. It only widens the gap between generations. Forgiveness does not mean you agree with disrespectful behavior. It means you accept that your children are also human, that they will make mistakes, and that they are learning how to navigate adulthood. The right amount of compassion can be a stronger bond than any words of criticism. I remember the story of Linda, a mother whose 2 children often treated her coldly, sometimes even ignoring her during family dinners. Linda once felt heartbroken, abandoned, and wanted to cut ties altogether. But instead of withdrawing or arguing, she chose forgiveness. She saw her children not as ungrateful kids, but as people struggling with their own challenges, pressures from work, finances, and personal relationships. Linda stopped blaming them. She no longer reminded them of past hurts. Instead, she patiently rebuilt the relationship through understanding and calmness. Over time, her two children began to recognize their mother's quiet patience and unconditional love. Slowly but surely, they changed. They stopped being distant and started listening, caring, and showing genuine respect. Dear parents, sometimes what your children need is not lectures or endless sacrifices, but your capacity for forgiveness. Accept that they are still growing, still learning to be decent human beings. When you forgive, you are not weak. On the contrary, you are giving your children the most powerful lesson about unconditional love. Final words. Being a parent has never been easy, especially when the roles between you and your children gradually change over time. There will be moments when you feel abandoned, disrespected, or even treated as a burden by the very children you raised with all your love and sacrifices. But instead of letting that pain take control of your emotions, choose to turn it into strength. True respect does not come from demands. It comes from the way you live. When you change, your children will naturally change too. If you found this video helpful, please leave a comment, share your thoughts, and especially don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you won't miss any of our future content. Your support is the motivation for us to continue spreading these valuable lessons. Thank you, and we look forward to seeing you in our next video.